I didn't notice the first time she didn't ask. If I had, maybe I would have understood sooner. Maybe I would have said something while there was still something to say. But at the time, it just felt like a normal evening. I picked my keys up from the kitchen counter and said, "I'm going out for a bit." She was on the couch with her laptop open, legs tucked under her. She didn't look up. "Okay," she said. That was it. "No, where are you going?" "No, with who?" "No, when will you be back?" Just okay. At first I told myself it was healthy. That's what trust looks like. Secure people don't keep tabs. Secure people don't need constant updates. It took me too long to realize it wasn't about being monitored. It was about being noticed. It was about that small, automatic curiosity that says, "I'm tracking you. You're part of my day, even when you're not in the room." When we first met, she tracked me without trying. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, one of those long tables shoved together in a restaurant that's louder than it needs to be. I almost skipped it. I had work the next morning. I didn't feel like performing being social, but I went. She sat across from me, diagonal, close enough that our knees brushed under the table once when someone shifted. She apologized right away. I said it was fine. We didn't talk much during dinner. Just small observations about the food, the music, the birthday guy ordering half the menu like he was hosting a banquet. When it ended and everyone spilled out onto the sidewalk, she ended up walking next to me. "Do you live around here?" she asked. "About 10 minutes that way," I said. She nodded. "Me too." So we walked in the same direction. Not as a plan. It just made sense. She asked what I did for work, where I grew up, if I liked the city, if I missed home. And she listened like the answers mattered. Not in a dramatic way. Not like she was collecting facts. Like she was building a picture in her head and actually wanted the picture to be accurate. When I asked her the same things, she answered slowly, thoughtfully. She didn't perform a version of herself. She didn't speed up to fill silence. She didn't try to be impressive. At one point she said, "So what do you usually do on weekends?" I shrugged. "Nothing exciting." She smiled. "That's not what I asked." She wanted the real details. The boring ones. The ones that don't sound like a story. That stood out to me. When we started seeing each other, she asked about my life the way you ask about someone you're making room for. If I said I was meeting a friend, she'd ask which one. If I said I was going to the gym, she'd ask what I was training. If I said I had a late meeting, she'd ask what it was about. Not suspicious. Not possessive. Present. It made me feel like my movements through the world weren't just background noise. I started doing the same for her. If she said she was going out with coworkers, I asked where. If she mentioned a friend's name, I asked how they were doing. If she laced up her shoes for a run, I asked which route. We weren't keeping records. We were participating. After about a year, we moved in together. It felt natural. We were already spending most nights together. Already splitting groceries. Already falling asleep mid-conversation. Keeping two apartments started to feel like pretending we weren't what we were. The place we found wasn't impressive. Old floors. A small kitchen. Windows that rattled in the wind. But it was ours. In the beginning, we narrated everything without thinking about it. If I stepped out for coffee, I'd say where. If she ran errands, she'd list them. Not because it was required. Because it was easy to share a day with someone who actually wanted to be in it. Sometimes she'd call from the grocery store. "Do we need milk?" she'd ask. "Probably," I'd say. "Probably isn't helpful." We'd laugh. At night she'd ask, "What did you do today?" And she meant it. She wasn't filling space. She was inviting me in. I'd tell her about a weird email from my boss. A conversation I overheard. The overpriced lunch I had to buy because I forgot mine. She'd react, ask a follow-up, remember it later. "You said that project was stressing you out. How's it going now?" Those little check-ins made me feel steady. Like my life mattered beyond me. I didn't notice when it started thinning. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was small changes that were easy to label as normal. Work got busier. We got more tired. We got better at living together. We fought less. The days started to look the same. And in the middle of all that, she stopped asking. At first it was tiny. I'd be by the door, putting on my shoes. "I'm heading out," I'd say. She'd glance up from her laptop or her phone and say, "Okay." And I'd still give her the detail, almost automatically. "Meeting Chris. Going to the gym. Running to the store." She'd nod. "Okay." No follow-up. No, "Oh, which bar?" No, "Tell him I said hey." No, "Be safe." Just okay. For a while I told myself it was trust. She didn't need to know. She didn't need updates. We were comfortable. But comfort used to feel like warmth. This felt like something else. So I waited for it to come back. Like you wait for a habit to return after a busy week. It didn't. The texts changed too. In the beginning, she'd send small check-ins during the day. How's your afternoon? Did the meeting go okay? Are you still alive? Then the messages got shorter, less frequent, more practical. Can you pick up bread? Did you pay the electric bill? I answered in the same tone. I didn't want to be the only one reaching. I didn't want to seem like I needed something she wasn't offering. So I matched her, and we got good at being efficient. Responsibilities handled, chores split, schedules coordinated. We functioned, but a softer thing started disappearing. The thing that made us feel like we were in the same life, not just the same apartment. One night, I was tying my shoes by the door. I'm meeting Chris, I said. Okay, she said from the couch. I stood there for a second longer than I needed to. Not as a test. More like my body still remembered what used to happen next. Nothing happened next. I almost added, at the bar on Fifth. I didn't. I walked out anyway. Halfway down the stairs, I felt a hollow space open up in me. Not anger. Not panic. Just a small, clean absence where a question used to live. At the bar, Chris looked at me for a second and said, "Everything good at home?" "Yeah," I said automatically. Because nothing was technically wrong. We still lived together. Still shared a bed. Still said, "Love you," before leaving the apartment. But I had started to feel like I could leave and it wouldn't register. That night, I came home and the lights were off. She was asleep. I stood in the bedroom doorway for a moment and watched her breathe. She looked peaceful, untouched by whatever I was carrying around. And I had the uncomfortable thought. If I didn't come home until morning, I wasn't sure she'd notice right away. Not because she didn't care. Because I wasn't being held in her mind the way I used to be. I didn't bring it up. How do you tell someone you miss them asking where you're going? It sounds petty. It sounds insecure. It sounds like you want permission. So I kept it inside and tried to convince myself I was overthinking. To be sure, I did something I'm not proud of. I tested it. One Saturday afternoon, I grabbed my jacket and said, "I'm heading out." She looked up from her phone. "Okay." I stood there. Nothing. "Back in a bit," I added. "Sure," she said. She didn't ask how long a bit was. She didn't ask what I was doing. Her attention slid back to her screen like that was the end of it. That was the first time I felt something close to embarrassment. Not because she was doing something wrong. Because I suddenly felt ridiculous standing there, waiting to be asked a simple question like a kid waiting for permission to leave the house. And the thing was, I didn't want permission. I wanted proof I existed in her day. A few weeks later, my phone died while I was out. I came home later than usual. When I walked in, she was on the couch watching something. She glanced at me. Hey, sorry, my phone died." She nodded. "Okay." That was it. No, I was worried. No, you could have let me know. No irritation. No relief. Just okay. I went into the bathroom, turned on the light, and stared at myself in the mirror like I was trying to find an explanation on my face. Part of me wanted her to be mildly annoyed. Even that would have felt like evidence I mattered. Instead, my comings and goings felt neutral. Like I was an elevator in the building. Present. Functional. Unremarkable. After that, I started noticing other absences. She stopped asking about my day in any real way. The question still showed up sometimes, but it landed like routine. How was work? Fine. Good. End of conversation. No follow-up. No circling back later. No remembering details next week. If I didn't volunteer something interesting, nothing stuck. And I stopped volunteering. Not as a punishment. It just felt strange to narrate your inner life to someone who wasn't leaning in. We weren't cold. We weren't hostile. We were parallel. Two adults sharing space, not really tracking each other's inner worlds anymore. The realization didn't land all at once. It arrived in a quiet moment I still think about because it was so ordinary. It was a Sunday morning. I woke up early. She was still asleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, and thought about going for a walk. In the past, I would have left a note, or at least told her later. That morning I didn't. I just got up, put on a jacket, and left. No message. No explanation. When I came back an hour later, she was in the kitchen. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She didn't ask where I'd been. I poured myself coffee. I stood there holding the mug, waiting for the question even though I hadn't earned it. I hadn't offered anything either. The air between us felt heavier than it should have. And that's when it clicked. She didn't ask because my absence didn't create a gap. She wasn't waiting for me to return. She was just continuing. I wasn't a thread in her day anymore. I was a fixture. And fixtures don't require updates. I stayed. Of course I did. You don't end a relationship because someone stops asking where you're going. That sounds absurd out loud. But it wasn't about the words. It was what the words used to carry. Curiosity. Attention. That soft mental habit of including someone without effort. I tried to pull it back in small ways. When she said she was going out, I asked, where? She'd answer briefly. Dinner. With who? Just the girls. No details. No story. No mirrored curiosity. Like we were exchanging required information and nothing more. I started feeling unnecessary in small ways. If I left the room, she didn't notice. If I came home late, she didn't comment. If I changed plans, it didn't ripple. I didn't feel controlled. I felt invisible. And the worst part was she wasn't doing anything obviously wrong. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't mean. She wasn't even sharply distant. She was just no longer oriented toward me. We still laughed sometimes. We still shared meals. We still slept side by side. But we weren't weaving each other into the day anymore. One evening, I stood by the door again. I'm heading out, I said. She looked up. Okay. I paused. The way you pause when you're waiting for a word that used to come next. For a second, I almost said, don't you want to know where? But if curiosity has to be requested, it isn't what it used to be. So I left. In the hallway, I felt the weight of something settling in me, calm and heavy at the same time. This is what it feels like when someone stops making room for you in the ordinary parts of their life. It doesn't sound like anything. It just goes quiet. Eventually we talked. Not about the question specifically. About the distance. I don't know, she said. I think we're just comfortable. Comfortable. That word again. I nodded, because arguing with comfortable is hard. It sounds ungrateful. It sounds dramatic. It sounds like you want problems. We tried to fix it in the ways people try to fix things when they can still pretend it's simple. We planned a date night. We asked more questions. For a week, maybe two, it felt intentional. Like we were remembering the shape of us. Then it slipped again. Because you can't keep something alive with effort alone. At some point it either becomes natural again or it stays like a performance you're both too tired to maintain. The last time I noticed it, I was putting on my jacket. I'm going out, I said. She didn't even look up. Okay. And I didn't wait. I didn't test it. I didn't hope. I didn't fill the silence. I just left. Not because I had somewhere important to be. Because staying felt heavier. A few months later she said, calmly, like she'd been thinking about it for a while, that she thought we had grown apart. I wasn't surprised. I had felt it in every okay. We packed without fighting. We divided kitchen utensils like adults. We made sure bills were covered. We were careful with each other in the way people are careful when they don't want to make a quiet ending loud. On the last day, I carried boxes down the stairs. She stood in the doorway. We hugged goodbye. It felt familiar and empty at the same time. I picked up the last box. She didn't ask where I was going, and I didn't tell her. I carried it to my car, set it in the trunk, closed it, and sat in the driver's seat longer than I needed to. The engine wasn't on yet. The radio wasn't on. Nothing was on. The street looked the same. Parked cars. A porch light flickering above the entrance. A neighbor taking out trash like nothing in the world had shifted. I turned the key. The car started. I pulled away. No one asked where I was going. For a few blocks the thought looped in my head. Not dramatic. Just persistent. She didn't ask. She didn't ask. She didn't ask. A few weeks later I ran into her in a grocery store. We both reached for the same box of pasta. She laughed awkwardly. Sorry. It's fine, I said. We stood there holding separate boxes, not knowing what to do with our hands. How have you been? She asked. Okay, I said. She nodded. Me too. We talked for maybe 2 minutes. Work. Weather. Nothing that required a real answer. Before we parted, she said, take care. I said, you too. She walked away. She didn't ask where I was going, and I didn't tell her. I stood in the aisle longer than necessary, not because I wanted to follow her, not because I wanted to cry, because seeing her confirmed what I already knew. We hadn't made a sudden mistake. We hadn't ended something that was secretly still alive. What we ended had already been quiet for a long time. After that, my life didn't change in a way people can see. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner. I slept. I repeated. Inside, I felt rearranged. Not shattered. Rearranged. Like furniture moved in a dark room. You don't trip over anything, but you know the layout isn't what it used to be. I noticed something I didn't like about myself. I stopped assuming anyone was interested in the small details of my day. When I left my apartment, I didn't feel the urge to tell anyone. Not because I was hiding, because I wasn't used to being tracked anymore. That habit didn't stay in the relationship. It followed me out. It showed up in small moments. I'd pause before leaving a room, almost announcing myself, then stop. I'd think of something funny and reach for my phone, then realize I didn't have a default person to send it to. It wasn't tragedy. It was weight. I moved into a small studio a few months later. The first night I sat on the floor with a slice of pizza and no furniture, listening to the room echo. I thought about texting someone just to share it. Not for help, not for validation, just to put the moment somewhere outside my own head. I didn't. Not because I had no one, because I had gotten used to keeping moments to myself. So I started rebuilding that slowly, almost without thinking about it. A text to Chris, a call to my brother, small sentences. Just moved in, made a decent dinner, had a weird day. Nothing profound, just proof I still knew how to reach. Over time, she stopped living in my mind like a presence and started living there like a memory. A finished chapter. Sometimes something reminded me of her, a song, a restaurant, a phrase she used to say. It didn't hurt sharply. It felt distant, like remembering a house you used to live in. You remember the layout, but you don't feel like you belong there anymore. I still think about that question sometimes. Where are you going? Not because it was magical, because it was ordinary. It was the smallest way of saying, I'm including you. I'm paying attention. Your movement matters to me. When it disappeared, nothing replaced it. We didn't start yelling. We didn't start accusing. We didn't blow up. We just stopped leaning in. And it took me too long to understand that what I missed wasn't supervision. It was curiosity. Now, when I leave my apartment, I still sometimes pause at the door, not waiting for a question, just noticing the pause. Then I open the door and I go. No one asks where I'm going. And that's fine. But I know what it feels like when someone wants to know. I know the difference between freedom and indifference. I didn't learn it in an argument. I learned it in an okay that didn't come with anything after it. That's how it ended. Quietly, like it was always ending.